Hello and welcome to the in-news series of Drishti IAS. I am Pooja Dwivedi, and in this segment today, we are going to talk about the concept of one nation, one election. This topic is important from the point of view of prelims, but mostly it is important from the point of view of GS Mains Paper 2. So let's begin with the topics of discussion step by step. First and foremost, we are going to talk about, as always, why news. We will also talk about the background of the concept. We will talk about one nation, one election concept in contemporary times. We will talk about the amendments which are needed to the constitution for making this come into practice. We will talk about advantages of this concept, the disadvantages and the way forward. And lastly, I am going to ask you a mains-based question which will be easily answered with the help of this segment. But I am also going to ask you a prelims-based question in the midst of the segment as always. So let's begin with why news. As we proceed with the discussion, I would like to clear the concept of what is one nation, one election. This means conduct of simultaneous election for state assemblies as well as the Lok Sabha. That means restructuring the entire election procedure when a caster of vote will elect member for the state assembly and the Lok Sabha with one vote. Alright, so why in news? Because Prime Minister Narendra Modi on 27th November again raised the pitch for one nation, one election and a single voter list. Single voter list for all posts in order to prevent the halting of development work because of the application and implication of the Model Code of Conduct. Also, now let's talk about the background because it's important you know the background of it. This concept is not alien to India, and this is not a new concept because we started having our elections simultaneously post-independence from 1952, the first election, till 1967. India mostly had simultaneous election for the Lok Sabha and the state assemblies. Back then, Congress was the single largest party, but after 1967, things started to change when in certain states, non-Congress ministries started to form, such as West Bengal, Punjab, Odisha, Bihar, Madras. So in such states, Congress started losing its ground. And one more setback came when in 1968 and 1969, certain legislative assemblies, state legislative assemblies were dissolved. And one more setback came when in 1970, call for an earlier election was made by the then government of India due to internal party disturbances. So after that, the entire synchronized election system came to end, and then the idea of reverting to simultaneous polls was mooted in the annual report of Election Commission in the year 1983 and also in the Law Commission report of 1999. Alright, so I told you about the background in a very crisp manner. Let's move on to the concept of one nation, one election in contemporary times. So if we talk about the concept of it, basically if we talk about what elections are in India and how they are conducted, so every year at least 5 legislative assemblies are in the process of conducting elections. It's an yearly affair. So if we talk about recent times, the recent push to this particular concept came just ahead of the 2014 Lok Sabha polls in the Bharatiya Janata Party's manifesto. Alright, after that, Niti Aayog prepared a working paper in the year 2017 and said that yes, it had favors for one nation, one election, and said that due to the application and implication of the Model Code of Conduct, there arises a policy paralysis and development works come to halt. Also, there is no continuation of the government policies. Then, in the year 2018, the Law Commission also favored one nation, one election, and it said that certain amendments need to be made. If we talk about it, let's look at it. These are the key recommendations. So, the Law Commission of India said, what do we need? First, we need to amend the constitution. Second, we need to amend the Representation of People's Act 1951 we also need to amend the rules of procedure of LS as well as state assemblies. These are the key recommendations. We will go through them one by one. First, it said, the leader of the majority party be elected as the Prime Minister or the CM in the entire House, Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha for stability. Secondly, in case a government falls mid-term, the term of the new government would be for the remaining period only and not for the initial periods. A no confidence motion against the government should be followed by a confidence motion. So these were the key recommendations of the Law Commission, which was, if we talk about a prelims based question, please tell me in the comment segment when was the first ever Law Commission formed post independence and who was it chaired by. I have been seeing that you guys are really getting into the comment segment and you are answering many of the questions correctly. Thank you so much. So moving forward, let's talk about amendments to the Constitution. What do we need? Which articles do we need to amend for making this concept into reality? First, Article 83 needs to be amended, which deals with the duration of the Houses of Parliament. Second, Article 85 needs to be amended, for which works on dissolution of the Lok Sabha by the President. Third, Article 172 relating to the duration of the state legislature. Article 174 relating to the dissolution of the state legislature. Article 356 on President's rule. Now we will talk about the Representation of Peoples Act. This would also have to be amended for providing stability for the tenure for both Parliament and the state legislature. Now this should include two things. First, restructuring the powers and the functions of the Election Commissioner or Election Commission of India to facilitate procedure in order to conduct simultaneous election. Also, a definition of simultaneous election can be added in the section 2 of the 1951 Act. So with respect to RPI, these two amendments are needed. Now we will talk about more dimensions which include advantages. The first and foremost, and I think the most significant of the advantages, which is it will reduce the burden on government treasury. Now, it's an expensive affair to conduct elections of a state, and if we talk about it, if we talk about bigger assemblies have a cap of 28 lakh rupees to conduct an election. And if simultaneous elections come into practice, then it will be capped for rupees 11 billion for union, state and union territories as well. So there will be a lot less expenditure when it comes to expending on election. Second, speedy development work. How? Because whenever elections are in procedure or in process, what happens? Model code of conduct come into being. When MCC come into being, what happens? Development works and new projects can't move forward. So it causes a lot of problems for this with respect to policy continuation and continuation of development work. So if only once the election happens in, of course, certain period of time, the development work will be speedy. Third, of course, it will be a check on black money. If we talk about parliamentary committee reports, if we talk about election commission reports, if we talk about law commission reports, they have stated that yes, a lot of black money is turned into white money during elections. So there, if this continues, the parallel economy, that is the black money economy, will stem in India. If we have simultaneous election, this problem will also be addressed. Now, what else? Smooth functioning of government machinery. Now, government in general, the state governments, when they conduct elections, the central government, they deploy huge amount of manpower. Still, it is seen that rigging of poll results are there, and vandalism is there. So lot of disruption in the public life is there. Once, if we get this thing into practice, one-time election will not cause this public disruption. Schools and colleges can open on time. Teachers and other officials can go work and contribute in the economy. Efficiency of governance. Now, if elections are a one-time affair and not conducted annually, then the government need not to build up lucrative budgets to woo the general public, and they can take steps which are actually needed for the development of the country as a whole. Now let's talk about the disadvantages. First, local issues will fade out. A bigger picture is really good, but details should never be ignored. And regional parties target regional issues. They don't target national issues. So if simultaneous election comes into being, what will happen? National issues will overshadow regional issues. Now, in relation to the first point, it will be hard time for political parties. How? Regional political parties. How? Because regional political parties don't have that much of an outreach, also not that much of an expenditure budget for election. So these regional parties will be rooted out. Because of this, political consensus among parties is not an easy task, right? Now let's move forward to more disadvantages. It will delay the election results. How? Most of the parties right now, state parties, basically state governments are asking for elections through ballot paper. Now if we imagine conduct of one-time election with the help of ballot paper, not with the help of EVM, the amount of time it will consume to get out the consolidated result is going to be huge. Then lastly, constitutional problems. Of course, amending so many articles, and because the sheer nature makes it almost impossible. The sheer nature of the country, the diversity, the democratic setup makes it impossible. If we talk about Law Commission of India, it cited 3 examples of Belgium, Sweden, and South Africa. Because these countries have simultaneous elections, we can also have it. But if you think about it, these countries are mostly homogeneous in nature. If we talk about India, we are not homogeneous in nature. So is it possible? Let's talk about the way forward. It may be possible, but these things need to be checked. First, the final solution may lie in either amending the constitution or fixing the tenure of assemblies and Lok Sabha. Amending the constitution in the sense that shifting from parliamentary form of government to presidential form of government. Second, one nation, one election will be a good change, but only if it could be carried out with proper rules and execution of proper policies, taking into account the growing and aspiring needs of a good administrative culture and system. Also, a focused group of constitutional experts, think tanks, government officials, and representatives of political parties, of course, they are the stakeholders. These need to come together and talk about the way forward. So, in a survey, it was found that 77% of the voters will vote for the same party if simultaneous election comes into practice, will vote for the same party for the state legislative assemblies, state assemblies and the Lok Sabha, right? So, it is evidently clear that, yes, political elections are a whole year affair, and as tedious as it may sound and very difficult for the election commission as well as the people who are trying to keep pace with the never-ending election process. But if we talk about one nation, one election concept, it is not within an easy reach because of lack of political consensus. So I hope you found this segment informative. But before we go, we have introduced a mains-based question for you. Please look at this question. Critically examine. Now, keep certain words in mind. critically examine the feasibility of implementing one nation, one election. I hope you will be able to practice this question. Please do practice, and this segment may help in achieving your goals. So, thank you so much for watching. Here I am concluding the segment. Tomorrow we shall meet again.